All right, this is my studying stream. I'm gonna study the book Beyond Good and Evil, and today I'm gonna consider the second paragraph. But before the second paragraph of chapter one, but before that, I'd like to recite the first paragraph from my memory, since now I study in depth. I want to get through each paragraph not by just reading it, but also by memorizing it and analyzing it for a long time, like for a week or so, trying to think deeply and understand what's really going on there. Anyway, so the first paragraph, the first chapter, Peerages of Philosophers, and this is the first paragraph. The will to truth, which is to tempt us to many a hazardous enterprise, the famous truthfulness of which all philosophers have hitherto spoken with respect. What questions has this will to truth not laid before us? What strange, perplexing, questionable questions. It's already a long story, and yet it seems as if it were hardly commenced. Is it any wonder that we at last grow distrustful, lose patience, and turn impatiently away? That this Sphinx at last teaches us to ask questions ourselves? Who is it really that puts questions to us here? What is really this will to truth in us? In fact, we made a long pause at the question as to the origin of this will until we came to an absolute standstill before a yet more fundamental question. We inquired about the value of this will. Granted that we want truth, why not rather untruth and uncertainty, even ignorance? The problem of the value of truth presented itself before us, or was it we who presented ourselves before the problem? Which of us is the Oedipus here, which the Sphinx? It would be a rendezvous of questions and notes of interrogation. And could it be believed that at last it seems to us as if the problem had never been propounded before, that as if we were the first to discern it and get a sight of it, risk raising it, or there's risk in raising it. Perhaps there is no greater risk. All right, this was the first chapter, the first paragraph, and now let me go and read the second one. So I'm gonna, like at first, I'm gonna read the whole paragraph. It's not so big. And then I'm gonna get through this paragraph sentence after sentence. I've already memorized the first part of this paragraph, like up to this point. I did it yesterday. And next time, probably during the next week, I'm gonna memorize the second part of the paragraph, and then I'm gonna read the whole paragraph at once. I mean, recite it from my memory. But now let me read the whole thing. So how could anything originate out of its opposite? For example, truth out of error, or the will to truth out of the will to deception, or the generous deed out of selfishness, or the pure sun-bright vision of the wise man out of covetousness. Such genesis is impossible. Whoever dreams of it is a fool, nay, worse than a fool. Things of the highest value must have different origin, an origin of their own. In this transitory, seductive, illusory, paltry world, in this turmoil of delusion and cupidity, they cannot have their source, but rather in the lap of being, in the intransitory, in the concealed God, in the thing itself. There must be their source and nowhere else. This mode of reasoning discloses the typical prejudice by which metaphysicians of all times can be recognized. This mode of valuation is at the back of all their logical procedure. Through this belief of theirs, they exert themselves for their knowledge. for something that is, in the end, solemnly christened the truth. The fundamental belief of metaphysicians is the belief in antithesis of values. It never occurred even to the wariest of them to doubt here on the very threshold, where doubt, however, was most necessary, though they had made a solemn vow, the omnibus dubitandum. For it may be doubted, firstly, whether antitheses exist at all, and secondly, whether the popular valuations and antitheses of value upon which metaphysicians have set their seal are not perhaps merely superficial estimates, merely provisional perspectives, besides being probably made from some corner, perhaps from below, frog perspectives, as it were, to borrow the expression current among painters. In spite of all the value which may belong to the true, the positive, and the unselfish, it might be possible that a higher and more fundamental value for life generally should be assigned to pretense, to the will to delusion, to selfishness and cupidity. It might even be possible that what constitutes the value of those good and respected things consists precisely in their being insidiously related, noted, and crocheted to these evil and apparently opposed things, perhaps even in being essentially identical with them, perhaps, but who wishes to concern himself with such dangerous perhapses? For that investigation, one must await the advent of a new order of philosophers, such as will have other tastes and inclinations, the reverse of those hitherto prevalent philosophers of the dangerous, perhaps, in every sense of the term. And to speak in all seriousness, I see such new philosophers beginning to appear. All right, so now let's get back and go slowly, sentence after sentence. My purpose here is not to read you this book and explain everything what Nietzsche wrote. So my purpose is just to focus my attention as much as possible on this one paragraph, even on the half of this paragraph, which I'm going to consider today, and think about it on my own. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to reveal my stream of consciousness at this particular moment by using this piece of text as a, as something I can meditate on. All right, so how could anything originate out of its opposite? And Nietzsche gives some examples later, but again, anything originate out of its opposite. Let's make a hold of this question and think for a while. Like, how can anything originate out of its opposite? I guess in my life, I asked a similar question from time to time. And this question is, it's kind of similar. Yeah, the idea behind this question is like, look, there's something silly, right? And how can it be smart? Or, we look at children and we see that children usually they're not so smart. They believe in certain things which are hilarious and which make no sense. And yet later they grow up and begin to understand themselves better, the world better, and they abandon their beliefs. But is smartness only about beliefs? So I guess beliefs are crucial here. So if you have some crazy beliefs and you base your actions on these beliefs, it may lead you to various problems. But what's more important is not beliefs, but language and our ability to interpret what we see, what we hear, what's going on around us in a way which gives us a clear understanding. So there may be many examples, like, and I'd like to get back to school, my school experience, since it's the like I would consider myself at school. Like if I go back now, I of course do lots of different things and change the mode of my behavior. But back then, what held me back? Like it's so hard to understand from the point when you are in this point what's really going on. Like when you grow older and you have some different perspectives and you look from these perspectives at your previous experience, you may see that now it's so obvious that, all I had to do is X, Y, Z, and I couldn't do that because I was stupid, or because I didn't know something, or because I was overwhelmed with something else. So my attention was determined by things which I was thinking most of the time, and probably it was like video games and stuff like that. And I couldn't see what was going on since my language was insufficient to describe the reality. And later, when I started figuring out what was going on, I changed everything, but now I can't get back and change it. But anyway, so how could anything originate out of its opposite? So what is the opposite of something? Like stupidity and smartness or wisdom. Like, are they so much different? Like wisdom and stupidity. Do they have different source, origin? Or they're the same, just different degrees of stupidity make wisdom, or self-awareness of stupidity make wisdom. That's an interesting point. So you can't be stupid. You can be stupid when you believe in something and you don't understand that your belief is just a belief. You believe that this is true. So there's certain situation and there's something happens and you make a conclusion based on one situation. But let's suppose that in all the other cases, so this situation was an exception, but in all the other cases, the results of the situation will be different. But your conclusion based on your experience may lead you to the point where you wouldn't be able to understand that what happened was just an exception. So you would think about it as the rule, and you may even get to the point where everything what happens you interpret it through like this conclusion, so through your previous experience, and you don't see anything. Like when I point at a certain case, you don't even see what's going on, since you believe that it's like impossible or it makes no sense, because you have your own experience and you have a prejudice. You have, something like, okay, I'm saying nonsense. Let's stop here. Like my goal is here to talk, obviously. And often I see that I start developing some idea and I get aside and I don't actually see where am I going in my stream of consciousness. I get confused and I can't get back. So I have to learn to make pauses and see it kind of, be able to understand that I'm losing the track, since I don't want to talk too much, even though I want to think about this paragraph using these 10, 15 sentences for a couple of hours. it doesn't mean that I want to talk about some irrelevant things. So I want to really be there, be in this paragraph, try to understand what's written here. Of course, I have to use my personal experience to understand it better. But sometimes I just start using my personal experience and I start thinking about it and I forget about what was going on in the text in the first place. And then it takes a lot of time to get back and I lose a lot of time. I don't want to lose a lot of time. I want to use my time smartly. So whenever I go aside, I have to pause, think about it. Like, is it relevant to what I'm, learning? Is what I'm saying relevant to what I'm studying? And if it's not, I just need to learn to get back as fast as possible. And these streams, they're just rough materials. So I guess probably after, getting through the first chapter, I'll record some videos about this book and about this chapter, trying to summarize my experience, trying to understand better. But this is just a rough material. So I have to talk and use language, practice my grammar and pronunciation. So and this really helps me to find something that I wouldn't find otherwise if I just had a self-talk or if I communicated with people. But anyway, originate out of its opposite. So and this is like this whole thing is, which I highlighted, is not Nietzsche. So he presents some mode of reasoning or mode of valuation. How could anything originate out of its opposite? So Nietzsche wants to say that people who make such questions and try to prove that it's impossible, that let's say courage and cowardice have different origin. It's not just degrees of something, but selfishness, selflessness. And essentially we come to this distinction between spiritual and material worlds. So material world is by definition something dirty, and spiritual world, it's the most beautiful, right? The greatest world. So this how this whole concept of philosophers, these concepts of philosophers work. So you choose something that you worship and you try to prove that this is a kind of unique thing and all other things aren't important at all. And in the world, this is the most important. There are so many ideologies based on certain ideas. Before, in past, I guess there were many philosophies based on virtue. So the idea of virtue, what is virtue? It's kind of way of being when you aim at being a good person and you do everything what is prescribed by religious teachers, by certain philosophies, and you finally become a good person if you really are able to follow these prescriptions. And sometimes prescriptions aren't based on anything but critical thinking, or like in skepticism there was a school of skeptics. They like 25,000 years no thousand 2,500 years ago, there was guy named Pierre, and he didn't have certain prescriptions, but rather he tried to avoid all sorts of prescriptions, saying that whatever rule or whatever idea, whatever principle you follow, there may be some other principle which is equally valid, and your belief in your own principle is based mostly on superstition and prejudice rather than on the validity of the principle itself. But anyway, yes, like again, I'm losing the track. Let's read the second sentence and try to make them. Actually, I have to read the whole thing and try to make sense out of it. But anyway, for example, truth out of error, or the will to truth out of the will to deception, or the generous deed out of selfishness, or the pure, sun-bright vision of the wise man out of covetousness. Such genesis is impossible. Whoever dreams of it is a fool, nay, worse than a fool. Okay, so in people, yeah, some philosophers had said that. So if you think about your true nature, what is it? Is it your body or it's your spirit? So, and if you believe that your body is your true nature, it's transitory, right? It'll die, and this attempt of philosophers and some religious dogmatists to devaluate the body, devaluate the material world, so dismiss it, say that material world makes no sense, and only this spiritual world, infinite consciousness, this is the only thing which exists, and everything else is just illusion, deception. It's not just about past. It's not just about the past. It's about the present as well. So right now we have all sorts of metaphysicians who claim that all this material stuff aren't important, and what's really important is to cultivate your spirit, to gain your not gain but to raise your awareness, to develop your psychological yourself. So work on yourself, on your ego, but not work on your ego, becoming more and more egoistic, but becoming less and less egoistic, less and less selfish, and learn to do all sorts of things not for yourself but for other people, as if other people was the right criterion for for actions. If you do it for other people, why for other people? Why not for all living beings? And if for all living beings, why not for the entire universe? And if for the entire universe, like, what's the difference actually? Why not for yourself? Since you, when you talk about consciousness and ego, yeah, you actually can't do anything about, you have direct control over your body, and you may do something with your body, and you can't do anything with the outer world. You may, of course, you may change something. You may, you may do something on a social level, right? So we might go and teach people or try to convince them to do something or make some kind of business and build some companies and states, empires, philosophical schools, spread wisdom and education. But in the end, you first have to do something with yourself. And these teachings are, these ideas that selfishness is the best thing that a selfish person, a saint who doesn't do anything for himself, but does everything for the sake of his spirit, or eternal spirit, or the community, or the people, or all living beings. So it sounds so attractive. So whenever you really meet a person who tries to behave that way, it's immediately creates some kind of respect, since we may say that there are some people who pretend to be selfless, who understand that this is a very powerful ideology. You may just convince other people that you do everything for them, and they of course will treat you in a better way. They'll consider you as a good person, and probably they'll use you as well for their own purposes. But the idea behind this is that you may pretend and you may gain status and what's the word? So you may gain all sorts of social benefits from this mode of behavior. And on the other side, you don't need to be selfless. So you may do it with full awareness that whatever you're doing, you do it for yourself, but you behave to make other people believe that you do it for them. And in this case, it leads to all sorts of troubles, since you kind of create a split in your personality. You treat yourself in one way and you behave in a different way, and you treat like you have kind of two masks. One mask is or just one mask, right? So one mask is for all people. You say, oh, okay, I'm this person who does everything for other people. And for yourself, you kind of aware that, no, I just say it to other people since it makes my life easier or better, or it helps me to, manipulate other people. And on the other hand, we may have somebody who really wants to be selfless, and he understands that he is quite selfish, he or she, but he tries to work with his or her personality. So what does he do? He tries to really be selfless. He tries to behave in a way that it'll bring benefits for the society, the world, everybody. And often you see the contradiction again here. It's quite popular. So those people who are really trying to develop this kind of thinking and mode of being, who really want to be selfless, they actually don't, they are taken by society in the opposite way, since usually they say, come on, I'm selfish, and I know that, and you're selfish, and we all are selfish. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to be selfless, and that, but you don't talk about it. You don't talk to people like, I'm so selfless, and selflessness is the most important thing, and everybody must be selfless. No, you don't say it. You just try to be selfless. That's all. If it works, great. If not, well, you try more and more. But uh, usually people tend to think about you as if you were kind of crazy person. But when we have somebody who publicly claims that selflessness is the key, we all have to be selfless, and this is the way, like how you have to do your spiritual work. Just forget about your ego, forget about your desires and wishes and do this, spiritual work. Be selfless. Do everything for other people. Help other people. Oh, and these people are taking us serious, sages. And you go on the internet, you find some sadgurus and some people like that, like Leo Gura, whoever, who talks about selflessness a lot. Oh, two examples are, I guess it's not enough, but if you go, yeah, there are so many examples. I don't even know names of these people, but if you go and type like selflessness and spirituality, you'll like Eckhart Tolle, the same guy, I guess he talks about the same things. So you'll find lots of things. We'll find lots of people who like claim that everybody must be selfless. Do these people behave in a selfless way? Do they really believe that they are selfless? Well, they know deep inside that they're as selfish as everybody else. And there's no way to get out of this mode of being especially by teaching other people to be selfless. So you don't need to teach anybody. But as soon as you start teaching people to be selfless, it's basically shows your selfishness. It's a paradox, and this is hard. I mean, this paradox is hard, but it's powerful, and it gives you certain benefits in life when you really create kind of illusion that you're a selfless person. It attracts certain energy, let's say. But anyway, so uh, here's the question about different dichotomies, right? For example, truth out of error, or the will to truth out of the will to deception. How can truth, and Nietzsche doesn't talk about it seriously. I mean, this is just this is just a kind of reason in which he wants to criticize. He says, look, people who say that they're liars. So they don't understand themselves. They believe in things which aren't there, which aren't real. So they create some ideals and say, this is how things should be. But by doing that, they dismiss reality. They dismiss what's really going on here. And they may have great intentions. They may have serious, they may be really good people, but being good doesn't mean that you do something for society. Being good is just a weakness for Nietzsche, since it's not enough to be good. If you want to change the world and make the world better, it's not just for you to be good. You have to understand what's going on, and understanding is more important. And if you are good, you are probably delusioned, since you have certain beliefs about how things should be, and these beliefs block you from seeing how things really are. And this is the purpose, to see how things really are. Then probably you'll be able to do something. And by doing that, you'll probably be able to change something. But nobody knows, will you change or will not? But being good, for Nietzsche, it's the worst thing. Just being good. I mean, I'm going to be a good person. I'm going to follow the rules. I'm going to live a decent life. According to whom? According to your religion? According to your, cultural tradition? But again, according to whom? Who is your role model? Is it your religious teacher? Is it some scientist? Is it some educator? Is it somebody else? Like, is it some person on TV who makes a night show? So it's a very complex question. But anyway, let's go on. Will to truth. Pure sight, bright vision out of the wise man out of covetousness. What is covetousness? Yeah, I know it's kind of, it's like greed, but something similar to greed. I'm not sure exactly. Having a very strong desire to have something that someone else has. Oh, it's like a jealousy. Covetous. Covetous. Yeah, covetousness. Okay. Covetousness. Such genesis is impossible. Whoever dreams of it is a fool. Nay, worse than a fool. Things of the highest value must have a different origin, an origin of their own. In this transitory, seductive, illusory, paltry world, in this turmoil of delusion and cupidity, they cannot have their source. Okay, I'm going to go slow and consider some words. I guess it's also maybe helpful to understand, the paragraph. I have to understand each sentence and also each word. And when I slow down and try to think about words which Nietzsche uses, and this actually, it's a translation, but it's a pretty decent translation since I read this book in two languages. Both are not original languages the book was written, but anyway, so it's almost identical. When I read it in Russian and in English, it's almost identical translation. So I suppose that in German, there's all the words mean the same thing. There's no mistranslation or something like that. But anyway, so such genesis is impossible. So, and we're talking about here like genesis. So it's like origin. When we, look at the nature. Like, see, there are some plants which are beautiful and other plants which are ugly, or trees. Some have poison, and animals as well. So there are some dangerous animals who, predators, and there are other animals like prey. And so we may say that, truth and all these highest values, they have their nature not in nature, but in something else, in something spiritual. But Nietzsche, I guess he probably wants to say that it's all just a prejudice, that all things come out of nature. So in nature, there are certain seeds for all sorts of things. Even though they may have different appearance in their source, they're the same. So nature is the same. And all these valuable things and concepts and ideas, virtues, religious and philosophies, sciences, they're not based on some metaphysical, whatever principles. They're based on the same things all the other things are based on. Oh man, hard to talk today. Yeah, I see. I guess I have to do this exercise more often than just once a week. Makes me a little bit lazy. But now, there's plus 35-degree, and it's too hard to sit at the computer for a couple of hours, sweat and read these dumb articles. So I prefer to go around, to go to nature, walk, or just lay in bed and watch lectures or write something. But again, it's funny exercise. I committed myself to do this exercise to get through the entire book, and I'm going to do that at least once a week, as I said. But probably soon I'm going to dedicate more time. But anyway, so origin, genesis. Such genesis is impossible. Whoever dreams of it is a fool, nay, worse than a fool. Things of the highest value must have a different origin, an origin of their own. In this transitory, seductive, illusory, paltry world, in this turmoil of delusion and cupidity, they cannot have their source. So Nietzsche mocks all these dualists who say that, there are good things and bad things. And again, the book is called Beyond Good and Evil. And Nietzsche wants to say that there is no good and evil, that all these evaluations are based on prejudices. This is the idea behind the book, that good and evil are essentially the same things. It's only our consciousness, our language, our perspective, which gives them their meaning. In nature, there's nothing good, there's nothing bad. So nature itself is neutral. But we treat it and think about the world as if it consists of two different opposite things, like day and night, right? Or good and evil. And it helps us to survive. It helps us to develop our civilization, our societies. And Nietzsche wants to say that's good. It's a delusion, and it's good, since it, like, otherwise we wouldn't probably be alive. But we must understand that this is an illusion. So when we think about life and death, so for us, all bad things are based on this one thing, death. So there's death, and it's by definition negative. And everything that relates to death has a certain meaning. We have to avoid it, and we may, consider it evil. And it's not just only death; it's all sorts of malevolence and abuses. But essentially, it's like death is the final point, and we may say death is, something bad. And Nietzsche will say, no, it's not something bad. So sometimes death is a good thing. Imagine that you suffer from terrible diseases and you have to die. It's better for you to die than to stay alive for next 10 years, like Nietzsche himself. So, as we know, his life, the end of his life, the last 10 years, he was considered mentally sick. He stopped writing books. He stopped doing anything he was doing before, and just, he was living in a kind of animal state for the last 10 years. Now, if we ask the question, like, let's suppose Nietzsche has an opportunity to get back to the time before he got mad and kill himself. Would it be appropriate to kill himself, or does it make sense to stay for the next 10 years and be a burden of your family and other people? Yeah, probably he, like, if he would follow his philosophy, like, if he really would play Zarathustra, he would probably commit suicide before, if he knew that he will, have this experience of 10 years of madness. And of course, it would change the meaning of his entire philosophy. Like, it's impossible to imagine I guess, see, now I have an idea. Then that's fascinating idea. Just kind of insight. Yeah, I don't have a time, of course, to work on this idea, but why not? I mean, yeah, I have time. So the idea is really fascinating. Just came up right now. So, these exercises, which usually result in some books and alternative history, when people say, "Oh, what if the World War II was won by Nazis? What kind of world we would have now?" Or what if instead of this president there was another president? Yeah, now my insight is like, what if Nietzsche committed suicide before his madness? Like, let's suppose he finished Ecce Homo and said, now I'm gonna kill myself, or he'll just disappear, let's say, not killing himself, like blowing up his mind, but just disappearing. Would it change the course of history? Well, I guess it will change the course of history tremendously, since Nietzsche was the key figure in 19th century and in the first part of the 20th century. And there are so many arguments about his inheritance is the right word. Anyway, so about his personality and his life, that he ended up in the madhouse. It was a counter argument. I mean, people usually say, yeah, Nietzsche, nobody knows actually what he was writing. There's few people who could read these books, but lots of people like to talk about Nietzsche, to take some famous quote or some poem or even some part of his books, like some paragraph from Beyond Good and Evil, and say, this is what this crazy guy said, and it's nonsense, it's madness. And he was mad. And they say, like, they look at his life and say, yeah, he got mad, and that's his philosophy led him to madness. So don't be like Nietzsche. Don't read Nietzsche. Don't try to think too much. Yeah, it always leads to some problems. But yeah, the idea is that, may be interesting to consider the course of history, like the First World War, the Second World War, like history, and also history, not history how we usually understand history, kind of the sequence of events, but also history of thought. Would it change much, like philosophy of 20th century, if Nietzsche just committed suicide in 1890, and his books his books will be treated differently in that case, too much differently. Yeah, but yeah, I said death, right? Death, life, yeah. You see, it's like inside. Of course, maybe if I commit myself to write this book for 1 hour a day, I'll probably make something exciting. But now, yeah, I just don't have time. I have for about 10 different projects I'm working on. And whenever a new project I take, like this, for example, it's a new project. And yeah, I guess I can just take so many different projects and work on all of them. Yeah, but it's so interesting. I mean, so if you have time, if you accidentally discovered my channel and watch my videos, and if you have some knowledge, if you have great style in writing and know German philosophy, and if you studied history, so you might take this, idea as a basis for your, yeah, it's like you may even make a movie. I guess a book movie. So Nietzsche didn't get mad, and take some different philosophers who were influenced by Nietzsche and see how they will develop their ideas in this case. How the world, yeah, maybe there would not be a World War One. Probably there would be a different movement, like philosophical movement now. But anyway, yeah, let's go on. Life and death, right? So everything what leads to death is evil, and everything what leads to life is good. But is it true? Like we tend to believe that this is how it should be. But in the world, essentially everything leads to death anyway. So even life itself. And by developing these ideologies and attacking death, we also develop, like, we suppress death and we develop fear. There is so much, negativity and so much troubles in the world because people are so afraid of dying, even though many people don't even leave. Yeah, their lives are just so miserable and they still are afraid of dying. They believe that it's better to be miserable and alive rather than be dead. But nobody knows what death is, since it's the end of knowledge. So maybe it's as natural as everything else. So it's not bad to be dead. But yeah, they create hell and paradise and say that most people end up in hell, especially if you do some bad things. As Nietzsche, for example, you'll end up in hell talking some shit and trying to offend good people, those who believe in truth, trying to attack them and say that they're idiots who do not understand themselves. All right, let's go on. Yeah. Whoever dreams of it is a fool, nay, worse than a fool. Things of the highest value must have different origin, an origin of their own. Because it really, I guess Nietzsche will go on and talk about it and say that it's not the case. It's just a prejudice. All things stem from the same source. And contradictions, they are also, it's only our way of interpreting what's here. But in reality, it's just, uh, turmoil of small particles like atoms and molecules and subatomic particles, quarks, which is endless. It's everywhere, just changing shapes. There's no way to get out of it. Like, you can destroy anything in this world. So you can only reshape something. And often this leads to something better. So you destroy dinosaurs and you get humans. Or probably we may destroy humans ourselves, and we may get some machines who are going to be better than we. So by all means, so they'll have different emotions, better emotions. They'll be more, generous, and they'll not other they'll not make other species suffer too much as we do. This animal stuff, right? So now we have so many animals who are just, we use them as meat. We eat so much animals. There are more animals than us, and all their lives is just stupidest misery. So you are born in a prison, you live in this prison for 10, 15, 20 years, you are fed with some trash. And then eventually you are killed to become somebody else's dinner. You have no freedom, you have nothing to do. Your life is just misery. And is it right to treat animals in this way? Someone said, no, animals are just animals, right? We're humans. So we have moral obligations only to other humans. But the other form of life, yeah, mosquitoes, for example, it always puzzles me. So I'm trying to kind of, you know, it's very hard to follow this principle. And you like, let's suppose that you're practicing something like ahimsa. So when you believe that killing all sorts of living forms is sin and it's a bad thing, and you try to avoid like killing anything, even mosquitoes. So it's not talking just about the animals, but all sorts of things. Yeah, and you know, yeah, I still eat meat, and I first of all, I don't believe in that killing is bad. So sometimes, yeah, it's like it all depends on situation. So we may kill animals. We're going to be killed by some other higher forms, or you know, it's okay. I mean, it's not a big problem. It's not a big deal. So what's not okay is just to go and kill, innocent people. Yeah, it's like for amusement or for some, principles which you have, or some crazy principles, or just somebody gets crazy and goes and shoot people at school. Yeah, it's not okay. I can understand that, but in certain cases, it's okay to kill, since there's certain things that shouldn't be. But anyway, so the idea about killing a mosquitoes, I often think about it when I kill a mosquito. I think, damn it! Like before killing a mosquito, I usually think like I have to. Yeah, that's the end of this little thing, and I have no other way. Otherwise, it will uh, distract me. It's like it'll harm my sleep, and it's gonna lead to problems with my health if I'm gonna lay and listen for 2 hours this bloody mosquito flying and zzz, so terrible. But killing him, that's okay. It's not a big deal. Like in the end, it's just a mosquito. And imagine that mosquito has language and may write books. What kind of books they will write? Say, humans, you're selfish. You're hypocrites, all of you. Yeah, and cows. Just imagine. Yeah, language is very crucial here. I mean, we have language, and we may talk about it, and if there is some group of people who is abused by others, they may write books and say, look, what's going on. You may end up in the same situation. Like, pay attention. Don't do that. Don't try to like attack something that you don't understand. Yeah, but when other species and life forms, like living beings, if they don't have language, if they can't really say anything, so we treat them as if they didn't exist at all. I mean, look at your cat, look at your dog. Yeah, you treat them well, but still you might do all sorts of stupid things in their presence, and you are not concerned with whatever they may think of you, right? That's such a big problem. So when we are around people, we behave as crazy. I mean, really, we behave in a completely unnatural way. We try to stay in a certain way, to use certain principles, social principles, which are based on, most of them are based on prejudices, but in the end we try to exhibit a certain form of behavior which is completely unnatural, which we wouldn't behave otherwise. And why is that? Because we believe that if we do something else, people will think about us as we were crazy. And it's like we choose to be crazy in order other people think about us as we're normal. Like, think about all these things which you do in the presence of animals. Like, you don't care because they don't say anything. They wouldn't think about you anything. But as soon as you assume that there's some other person, and this person may think something about you, they may judge you, you immediately become conscious of everything you say, everything you do, and most of it gets so unnatural, since you understand that, you kind of, you slow down and you uh, try to behave in a certain way, which is again unnatural. Since the natural way, you don't care about, like, you behave as if there were nobody who can judge you and say that this is wrong and this is right. Yeah, I guess it's kind of another interesting idea which I just had right now, have right now, have had right now, have had right now, is that, you develop a certain mindset where you allow yourself to be free in the presence of everybody else. So when you are not concerned with people, as you are not concerned with animals, and immediately there may be a kind of criticism. So you may say, oh, and then you are going to be a bad person since you don't take others, like you take others for granted, you don't care about them. But how do you know that maybe you are going to be the good person? Like what I'm doing here, that's one of my purposes here. So to reach the level where I feel absolutely free, talking about whatever I do, whatever I think, whatever I read. So I may interpret it in the way how I can understand it. And I shouldn't care about others. I shouldn't care about others' opinions. And for most part, I can do that if I don't record myself on a camera. So whenever I walking and thinking, I'm just, I feel free. But as soon as I sit there and start recording the video, I see that there's a shift in my thinking, in my stream of consciousness. And often I try to pretend, I try to present a kind of a better personality here than I am. I'm not authentic. And this bothers me since whenever I'm alone and I think and I write something, I I often discover so many brilliant things, and I think, wow, if only I would able, like, let's suppose I have a discussion, like after watching some lectures, I go to the roof and think about it aloud. So not just after watching lectures, also after reading some books, and sometimes without any purpose, just going and thinking aloud about like what's going on, developing my language, working on my language. And often I find such great thoughts, and I may think for 30 minutes or for an hour or sometimes even more. And this whole process, like if I don't record it, it's so much. It's like just I I like it so much. But then I think, oh, if only I could do the same and record myself, then I may show other people my brilliancy, and all of them will just subscribe to my channel, whatever, and write me some comments. Then I go home, I start recording the video, and I see that there's like nothing of this, nothing. Like my authentic authenticity drops immediately. So I become like a stupid monkey just talking about some nonsense and trying to pretend that I'm a different person. And my goal is here to reach this level where I wouldn't care about what other people think of me and what somebody else judges me. So this is the goal. And I know that it's very like I'm working on it for 4 years. Since I started thinking in English. I did it in Russian, and I developed this level in Russian, and it was so brilliant. I mean, then I could write and think and have some conversations when I could feel completely free, and it was just mind-boggling. But in English, see, there's a problem. I judge myself too much. I say, oh, it's cheap grammar. I can't express certain idea, and I need certain words, and I can't find these words. And then I start talking more and more, just trying to find better words, and it leads to all sorts of complexities, unnecessary complexities, to all sorts of troubles, and then I start judging myself. I have different emotions. The whole idea is about emotions. So whenever I talk to myself, I feel uh, I feel not just excited, I feel really, you know, astonished. And not all the time, of course, but most of the time when it goes well, I just have lots of pleasure and amusement. Whereas here, it's mostly suffering. Not all the time. Sometimes, of course, it's great and I enjoy what I'm doing. But still, like there are lots of suffering here. And I know where this suffering comes from. It comes from kind of external judgment. So I try to project my view to the future or to other people and judge myself as if I weren't speaking right now, but I were listening to this, like this guy who is speaking and judging him. And I do that also all the time, like watching myself and trying to analyze my mistakes, trying to analyze what I was saying. And often I don't like it. I see, wow, there's so much to work on. But it also motivates me a lot since I don't judge it in a way, oh, I'm a stupid person, let's just shut up. No, I'm judging it in a way, yeah, I'm a stupid person. I can't say anything meaningful. I can develop my thoughts, but there's like, I can try. I can try again. I can try again. There's so much to work on. And of course, you know, it's all subjective. I understand that you listening to me may say, no, you're a smart guy. You just say so many amazing things. And you're kind of, you don't know yourself if you try to say that you're stupid. You're not stupid. But see, the problem is when I say stupid and when I try to complain about this way how I speak, I basically mean that there's not the same quality as there was when I used Russian language, when I used my own language. And yeah, like I have certain standards and I know how can I speak. And I see that I don't speak yet like that. And you know, this is probably the main source of my motivation, since I know how can I speak and I know that there's nothing that may prevent me from developing this level. And eventually I will develop this level, but maybe it'll take another 5, 4, you know, 20 years. Who knows how many? Maybe I'll, maybe I'll die, and somebody else takes this, you know. And I mean, by the word "die" is very confusing word. But yeah, on my personal level, I think it's going to take maybe 5 years. So in 5 years, I'll reach the level where all these when I stop complaining and enjoy what I'm doing. But it's not just about language; it's also about my projection on, you know, on like my way of looking at myself when I criticize myself. So anyway, let's focus on the book. So let's just read up to this moment and then go on and finish the sentence, since I guess it's all just one sentence. So how could anything originate out of its opposite? For example, truth out of error, or the will to truth out of the will to deception, or the generous deed out of selfishness, or the pure sun-bright vision of the wise man out of covetousness. Such genesis is impossible. Whoever dreams of it is a fool. Nay, worse than a fool. Things of the highest value must have a different origin, an origin of their own. In this transitory, seductive, illusory, paltry world, paltry. In this turmoil of delusion and cupidity, they cannot have their source. Okay, let's go on. But rather in the lap of being, in the intransitor, in the concealed God, in the thing in itself, there must be their source and nowhere else. So this is a contradiction, right? Or an artificial contradiction. So all great things have different origin. Nietzsche says it's nonsense. It's just a prejudice. Virtue modesty, courage, generosity, all sorts of good things which are good from a certain, cultural or philosophical or religious point of view. All these good things stem out of the same source as selfishness, as cowardice, cupidity. That's what Nietzsche wants. Well, it's not exactly that, since he says, no, we like, how do we really know? He doesn't say that they have the same source. He says that, this is a prejudice. So this is exactly what he said. This mode of reasoning discloses the typical prejudice by which metaphysicians of all time can be recognized. So what is the prejudice? The prejudice is that there's no there are oppositions of things like love and hatred. And love and hatred, like love has its source in God, and hatred is just a human thing. And that's about all other things. So you may be intrinsically a bad person, but it's not just you may be, like all people are intrinsically bad. We're not angels, right? We're just people, and all humanity is just something bad. But there are higher powers like God and whatever else. And this is like the source of goodness in humans is different than like our nature. It's not nature. So the idea of Nietzsche, I guess, is that, and he'll talk about it later as well, about nature. So nature is cruel. Nature is terrible. Like our animal nature is stupid, cruel, malevolent, and we have in the same time conscience. And conscience in us is the greatest thing. But what is conscience? Yeah, it's our inner voice which tells us what's good. And we know that since we may see how it works. So if you listen to your conscience and do your homework, you're gonna get good grades and be a good person. If you play video games and don't listen to your conscience, or you follow your natural instincts and impulses, you eat lots of sugar, you know whatever, fool around. It's your nature. This division in your brain. So you have kind of old brain, which is the stem. You have limbic system, and you have neurocortex. So consciousness is in neurocortex, and it's a relatively new technology, let's say, evolutionary technology. So it's like late development in us, this neurocortex, and it thinks as a logical, reasonable human being, whereas your stem and your limbic system, they basically like frog mind and monkey mind. So when you give up to monkey mind and you stop reasoning, you stop doing your logic, and you just do something that you really want to do, something that you enjoy, but you eventually will judge. Yeah, this is like your nature. This is your bad, evil side. And it leads to all sorts of problems. So you don't consider other people here. So if you really want to have some, expensive thing, some jewelry, and there's somebody else who has it, but you may steal it from this person. Yeah, you like on the logical level, you may think, oh, we are both human beings. I'll cause him suffering. You had like this person had it, and I'll steal it, and then he'll suffer. No, I don't think like that. You think, oh, I wanted it, and I don't care about other people. I just, take it from them, and that's why it's a problem. Since we are selfish, we do everything for ourselves, and we cause lots of suffering to other people. But if everybody is going to be selfless, if we are going to help each other, then the life is going to be like a paradise. Everybody will help each other, and we all are going to be happy. Is it really true? I mean, I don't need somebody else's help. Yeah, and it's very, as Nietzsche calls it, a slavish way of thinking. So it's really great as suffering and, getting through all sorts of troubles and developing your character and being able to stand for yourself. It's, you feel much better if you do that, rather if you just supported by everybody and you basically don't do anything, and there's no you, so there's no strength in you, there's no personality. You're basically a parasite. You just live on the help of others, and all these others also live. Well, it's like you help each other, but for example, it's very hard to find kind of intuitive arguments, since for me it's again just a stream of consciousness. I didn't think about what I'm saying now. It's just I'm trying to think. Maybe I'll find few, three, five ideas, which then I can develop thoroughly by using kind of slow thinking and writing. But see, here's the idea that I know myself better than everybody else knows me. And I guess it's the case for all people. So there are some people who like don't care about themselves, and there are some clever psychologists who may know somebody better than they know themselves. But on average, it's the case. So everybody knows themselves better than other people. And when we say that you have to help, usually our help is based not on what other people ask us to do, but we think about ourselves, and we see, oh, okay, like I may help this person to get smarter, so I may teach this person English or philosophy. But like, does this person need philosophy or English or whatever? It's another question. And the problem arises when you don't know, you want to help, but what you do, it's like it's not actual help. It's something the opposite. So you try to help, it leads to problems, and eventually you realize that you may help to yourself. This is this for sure. So instead of helping others, help yourself. Be a good person. Be self-sufficient. Don't cause problems to everybody. This may make sense, or may not. I don't know. But it seems like this idea, it's like it's all about individualism. So everybody is responsible for themselves, and we all are trying to get better, to understand the world, to see what's going on, instead of going and helping others and doing everything for others. Since it's not going to be well, maybe it's going to be a good world, but who knows? Now it's not the case. But anyway, yeah, Nietzsche, prejudice of philosophers. So this whole is a prejudice, according to Nietzsche. And so what does he say? He says, this mode of reasoning discloses the typical prejudice by which metaphysicians of all times can be recognized. This mode of valuation is at the back of all their logical procedure. Through this belief of theirs, they exert themselves for their knowledge, for something that is in the end solemnly christened the truth. So what he wants to say? He wants to say the truth has been christened. Yeah. And like here he wants to say that there's, again, this dualism between nature or the real world and the metaphysical world. And nature is dismissed and taken as something cruel and bad and evil. The metaphysical world, all this idealism is worshipped and presented as the true world. And values, all these values are, well, they're what? They're changed. And it wasn't the case forever. I mean, I guess Nietzsche wants to say that there's, it's not eternal truth. There were some ideas, they were developed at the beginning of our era by slaves, basically slave morality, right? And these ideas got so much power, and for thousands of years they tyrannized humanity. But now it seems that we could understand what happened, what was going on. Now we see it better. And well, let's analyze it and figure out why it was the case for so many thousands of years. Yeah, why this happened? Who was these people? What they believed in? Why they believed in? And why it's so easy to manipulate the masses by, pretending that you are a selfless person, or by taking somebody who was really selfless as a role model and trying to copy his behavior and copy his lifestyle, even though you may not understand what are you doing and why. The fundamental belief of metaphysicians is the belief in antithesis of values. Antithesis of values. It's like Schopenhauer. I remember reading Schopenhauer's critique of Kant's philosophy. And in Kant, we have this aporias, like 4 aporias about finite and infinite, like parts and wholes, the part and the whole. And basically Schopenhauer says all antitheses are right and all theses of these aporias are wrong. So since Kant tries to prove that the world is infinite, and he goes on and write 2 pages developing an argument, and in this argument he says the world is infinite, and he proves it according to his logic. And then he writes another thesis, and he starts from thesis. Yeah, the thesis is the world is finite. So he goes on, proves that the world is finite, and then he makes an antithesis. Damn it, I have to learn to pronounce this word. Antithesis. And he claims the world is infinite. And he goes on and proves that the world is infinite in the next 2 pages. And he says it's just incomprehensible. So if you use language and logic, you may prove that both things are true. But they can't both be truth since they contradict one another. And Schopenhauer says, yeah, Kant, like, he wasn't honest. Actually, what he proved, like antitheses were true, whereas theses weren't true. It was just his dialectic, or his he was he wasn't he wasn't serious. He just made it to amuse people. And Nietzsche uses the word antithesis here, but I don't think he means like what. I don't think he wants to attack Schopenhauer and critique of Kant, since you know, Nietzsche probably also believed in these antitheses of Kantian antinomies, since it's very hard to assume that Nietzsche was a believer in finite world. Or any kind of believer in anything. But anyway, okay, so antithesis of value, it never occurred even to the rarest of them to doubt here on the very threshold where doubt, however, was most necessary, though they had made a solemn vow, the omnibus dubitandum. So here's Descartes. It's like, I doubt everything. This is the vow, like the beginning of Cartesian philosophy, the omnibus dubitandum, meaning like to doubt everything. Omnibus everything, dubitandum, doubt. Yeah, they, I guess, also say something. But anyway, antithesis of values. Yeah, I'm not sure that I clearly understand what Nietzsche tries to say here by antithesis of values. Probably he'll later reveal it more clear way. But fundamental belief of metaphysicians is the belief in antithesis of values. Okay, I'm gonna get back to it next time and consider it more closely, since I need to get through the second part of this paragraph and analyze it in more details. Yeah, for now, I guess it's enough. As I said, I'll try to organize my life in a way that I'll be able to make at least one studying stream each week. Maybe I'll try to like gradually develop my daily routine that I'll be able to make 2 streams and 3 streams, since I want to get through the entire book in this way. So this is my intention, to get through the entire. I don't limit myself with time. So I'm not saying that I'm going to get through the entire book like in a year or in 3 years, maybe a year, maybe 5 years. That's okay, even if it's 5 years. Though, of course, now I want to take some other books and read them in the same way. And I don't want to mix them up. I would like to read Schopenhauer and aphorisms about life, like Unliving Wisdom, it's called. In the same way, just going slowly through each paragraph. But I don't want to start it before I finish this one. And that's why probably I'm gonna hurry up and finish it not in 5 years, but in a year, or maybe even faster. But it seems that if maybe later I develop my style and I'll say less than I say now. I mean, I'll be able to speak more comprehensively, and it's going to take me, for example, just an hour to, yeah, probably I'll develop kind of more concise and precise language, so that I'll take just one paragraph, dedicate an hour to it, and then go through the next paragraph another hour, and then eventually like how many paragraphs are there. Let's check. Roughly 300 paragraphs. So it's 300 days. Yeah. If I can do it an hour, Yeah, but in that case, I wouldn't be able to memorize it. See, okay, I don't know. I don't really know. Now it seems that I want to get through the entire book. I want to do it like the time is not important here. What's important to do it carefully, trying to get through the book slowly, memorizing each paragraph and thinking about it, trying to understand not just from one point, but probably from many points. And here, what I've done now in this studying stream, I try to interpret Nietzsche and try to understand what he wants to say. But to understand it better, I guess I have to take the position of these metaphysicians, let's say. So I have to use this prejudice, which Nietzsche calls prejudice, and try to say that it's not prejudice. Try to prove that it's true. Try to understand from the opposite side how it works, and say, yeah, they have different origin, and Nietzsche is wrong here. Like what he wants to say is just nonsense. He just plays with language, and he doesn't believe himself in what he is saying. He just takes the most famous position and tries to argue with it, tries to attack it. Maybe his attack is not successful. Maybe it's just a word game. Maybe he does it on purpose. Who knows? So maybe there are different origins. Maybe there is something like God, or thing in itself, something like absolute consciousness. What if this is true? Yeah, and I have to be. Yeah, of course. I've already dedicated a lot of time listening to modern metaphysicians and reading other metaphysicians like Schopenhauer and Kant and Hegel and others, Plato, whatever. Yeah, in my view, so I'm on Nietzschean side here. So I want to say that there is nothing like, metaphysical world. Like it's all physical and it's all one and the same thing. Or there's the world of language and the world of this ontology. Yeah, I like this distinction between ontology and epistemology. So whatever we know about the world is just knowledge and it's language. And the world itself, it's not language. So, but language is produced by the world through us. In our understanding, our capacity to interpret the world. Well, like interpretations create different worlds, and why not? I mean, but should we really delude ourselves by assuming that these interpretations and language and consciousness and mind is the higher thing than material world? I mean, by higher, it's like basically what all the physicians wants to say is that the material world, it's a continuation or extension of spiritual world and linguistic world. So the first, there was consciousness, there was language, and only after that the real world appeared. And the real world is not the real world, it's just our description of the world. And Nietzsche here says, no, it's like the real world. Yeah, basically he wants to say it's the same. It's not just there's a difference between real world and language. It's the same world. But there are different programs and different modes of, reasoning and valuations. But anyway, yeah, gets too hard. Yeah, I guess I'll stop here. So as I said, next time I'm gonna memorize this part. Then I'm gonna start next stream from reading the first two paragraphs. Yeah, and then I'll analyze this like second part of the paragraph and the whole paragraph as well. All right, I'm done for today. See you next time.